1930s in Thomaston, Connecticut. There was a little boy named Teddy growing up. Now, Teddy was trouble. He didn't mean to be trouble, he just was. His curiosity and his enthusiasm just sometimes got the better of him. Now, Teddy's father worked for a clock company called Seth Thomas. And Teddy thought that his father had the coolest job in the world, because Teddy's father installed and repaired tower clocks. And Teddy imagined his father hanging on the ropes with his tool belt on and fixing those clocks. And Teddy thought, someday I'm going to have a tool belt just like that. And when Teddy's father wasn't fixing clocks and he was home, he had a garage in the back of the yard and he had a shop, and he would fix everything in that shop. And there were tools all over the walls and on the benches. And Teddy would just go into the shop with his dad, and he would just watch his father working on all those furniture pieces or fixing lawnmowers. And he was fascinated by all the different tools that his father used. Now, Teddy's father was very good at what he did for Seth Thomas. And in fact, he was so good that one year he was awarded a very special gold pocket watch that watchmaker had made four. One had been given to the President of the United States. A second was given to Teddy's father. And that gold watch, it was kept in a green velvet box on the nightstand next to Teddy's father's bed. But every Sunday morning, when his father got dressed for church and he put his suit on, the watch would come out and it would go in the breast pocket of his suit. And on Sunday mornings when they would sit in church and Teddy would be squirming and moving and squirming and he just couldn't sit still, his father would pull out the watch and they'd look at the time and they'd put it back in the pocket. And he'd squirm some more and his father would pull out the watch and they'd look at the time and it would go back in the pocket. And when they got home from church, the watch would go back into the green velvet box on the nightstand by the bed. Now, Teddy was not allowed in his parents' room. And Teddy had never actually touched the watch. He just liked to look at it. But when Teddy was 6 years old, for Christmas, he got his first tool belt. It had pliers and wrenches and screwdrivers and a hammer. And Teddy loved that hammer. And he set about fixing everything he could possibly find to fix with that hammer. But then in early January, this was Connecticut, remember, the snow began to fall. And it fell, and it fell. And Teddy was snowed in the house. And he got up one morning, and he got his hammer, and he set about fixing things. He started in the basement, fixing all the pipes and everything he fixed down there. And then he got up to the main floor of the house, and he fixed the pipes underneath the kitchen sink, and he was banging nails in the boards on the floor that were popping, bang, bang, bang. Oh, he loved that hammer. But then he had fixed everything on the main floor of the house. And he went upstairs and just started looking around for something to fix with that hammer. And he didn't mean to, but you know, his curiosity and his enthusiasm kind of got the best of him. And he went into his parents' bedrooms looking for something to fix. And then he looked over at the nightstand and he saw that green velvet box. And he looked around. I just want to see it, he thought. So he went over and he opened up the box and he took that watch out in his hand. It was heavy and it filled the whole palm of his hand. Wow. And then that hammer, it just kind of sprung to life. Bam! He hit that watch and a little piece of the porcelain face just flew off. And he began to bang and bang and bang on that watch. And then suddenly he heard the back door open and he heard his father's voice. Dot, I'm home. He didn't know what to do. He ran across the hall to his bedroom and he opened up his window and he pitched the watch out into the snow. And then he threw his hammer underneath the bed and he sat down on the edge of the bed thinking, and then he heard his mother's voice. Teddy, it's time for dinner. Come on down. Okay, Ma. And he ran into the the bathroom and he washed his hands and he wet the comb and he combed his hair and he fixed his shirt and he went down to the kitchen and he sat down at the table and he ate all his vegetables. He helped his little brother Will, cleaned up the high chair, and he said, "Mom, I'll help you with the dishes." "Okay, Teddy." So his mom washed the dishes and he dried and stacked them on the counter, and then he wiped the kitchen table. And when they were finished, he went into the living room and he began to play with his little brother. And he watched his father walk up the steps. And he heard the steps across the hall into the room. And then he heard his father's voice. "Dot, did you move my watch?" And his mother was sitting in the chair in the living room knitting, and she just looked over at Teddy. "No, Flick, I haven't seen your watch." Teddy did not say a word. Sunday morning came. His father got all dressed for church, put his suit on, and opened up the box and said, "Dot, are you sure you didn't move my watch?" She said, "No, Flick, I didn't move your watch." And Teddy didn't say a word. They went to church that Sunday morning, and Teddy sat perfectly still through the whole sermon. Weeks went by, and every Sunday morning, Flick would say, "Dot, have you seen my watch?" Teddy never said a word. Then spring came, and the snow melted. And it was time to clean up the backyard. And Teddy loved to work in the backyard with his father, and he couldn't wait. His father said, "Come on, Teddy, let's go get the rakes and go out back." And Teddy ran and got his rake, and he had his little small rake, and he was raking in the yard, and he was having a good time with his father. And then he watched his dad go over to the shrubs right underneath his bedroom window. And he remembered the watch. So Teddy took his rake and he started to rake in the very far back corner of the yard, farther and farther away from his dad. And then he watched his father reach down underneath a bush and pick something up, and he could see he had it in his hand. Teddy felt terrible. And finally he mustered up all the courage he could muster in that 6-year-old body, and he walked over to his father and he stood before him and he said, I did that. I did that with my hammer. I didn't mean to." And his father just looked at the watch, and he had a little tear on the side of his eye. He wiped it away and he said, "I know, Teddy. Let's go inside." Well, Teddy grew up, and he got married, and he had 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. And Teddy's children, they were all trouble. They didn't mean to be. They just were. Their curiosity and their enthusiasm, it just sometimes got the better of them. As an example of this, his 3 boys one day in the backyard were playing around the apple tree, and Teddy had a big house, and the 3rd floor of the house was an attic that Teddy had learned very well from his father how to use those tools, and he had converted that attic into 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. It was called the boys' suite. And his son Chris had the window open in the backyard, and the boys were looking up at that window way up at the top of the house as they were playing under that apple tree and smushing the apples under their feet. And I don't know which one of them said it first, but "Do you think we could get some apples in the window?" And so they thought, well, let's try. And so they began to pick up those smushy, rotten apples and hurl them up at the house. And now Eric was a pretty good shot, and he got several in the window. But Chris and Brian, they weren't so good. And theirs just swooshed on the side of the house. It was a mess. And about that time, Teddy got a call from his mother, who lived in Florida at the time. And she said, "Teddy, I'm very sorry to tell you, but your dad has had a heart attack and you need to come down to Florida." So Ted flew to Florida to help his mother get things organized. And he was sitting on the couch in his mother's living room, and his mother went to the back of the house, and she came and sat next to Teddy. And she reached into her pocket, and she pulled out a green velvet box. And she said to Teddy, "I have something for you. Your father and I have thought we needed to give you this for a very long time, and we think now's the time. And she handed that box to Teddy, and he opened it up, and there was this smashed and beaten gold pocket watch. You could just barely make out the letters, Septum. And Teddy looked at that watch. A tear came to his eye, and he wiped it off. You kept it. Well, after that, Teddy got home, and he took a fishing line, and he strung it to that watch, and then he hung it above his mantle in the living room. And so when Teddy's children, when their curiosity and their enthusiasm got the best of them, Teddy would walk into the living room, and he would stare at the fireplace, and he would pace. Well, then Teddy had 8 grandchildren, 7 grandsons, and 1 granddaughter. His 6th grandson, Joel, was trouble. Joel didn't mean to be, he just was. His curiosity and his enthusiasm just sometimes got the better of him. And one Christmas when Teddy's whole family was there, 5 kids, daughters-in-laws, sons-in-laws, 8 grandchildren, his son-in-law had just re-wallpapered the front foyer to the home. Up the stairs, up the hallway. It was beautiful. A beautiful viney floral print above the chair rail, and just a nice textured marble light-colored print below the chair rail. Well, Teddy loved that new hallway. His house built in 1740. It was his jewel. He loved that home, and that hallway now looked beautiful. And then Joel found a very fat, black, permanent magic marker. You know the ones as soon as you open up the top, you can smell them? Well, Joel was 3, and he got that marker. And he started at the bottom of the staircase, and he started practicing his letters. He watched his older brother learning at school. J, up the stairs, O. I came around the corner. Joel was mine. And the smell hit me before I even saw what had happened. And as I turned that corner and I saw Joel on the E, I said, Joel, what are you doing? My face got red and I was shaking. I was so mad. And I felt this hand on my shoulder. And I looked back and it was my dad. He said, Marty, come with me. What? Just come with me. And he brought me into the living room, and he stood before the fireplace, and he began to pace. I said, oh, what? I had seen that pacing many a time. And then he stopped me, and he said, Martha, just look. And I said, what? He said, look at the fireplace, above the fireplace. And then I saw it, that watch. He said, let me tell you a little story about that watch. And he told me the story of his hammer and smashing that watch. And I said, that's why you pace in front of the fireplace? And then he said to me, Marty, I've wondered for 40 years who should get the watch. And he said to me, you and Joel are going to need this watch. And from that day to this day, that watch sits in a frame with a picture of my father, who now looks like a polar bear. And when Joel is Joel, I pace in front of the fireplace.